In your book, we make spreads, which are 2 pages side by side that are bound in the gutter in the middle. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and talk about what makes up a spread and what do you actually see. So when we are working with a spread, you usually have a dominant element. This is the first thing I'm always going to be looking for when we're evaluating your spreads, and you should really be looking for on everyone's spreads because it draws the reader in by having a dominant element. This is like when you have, it doesn't always have to be a picture, but in the most sense for your books, it's a picture because it's an object or element that stands out. So that way it really draws the reader in. So a good dominant element is 2 to 3 times larger than any other element in the piece. So I know we're talking about spreads because we're talking about yearbook, but this occurs in photography, this occurs in art. There's always something that's taking up a majority of the reader's attention, so that way they are drawn in to see the smaller details and read further. So in magazines, we see dominant elements tend to be text and pictures, large headings and pictures. But here we have the swimmer being the dominant element, and then the secondary element would be this heading. Those two pieces together are drawing the reader in to then want to read the actual story. Same thing here. You've got the picture, which is then leading to talking about how he, all the quotes that are coming out of it and all those kinds of things. But the picture is the dominant element. And then you can see that it's actually drawing the reader across the spread to then want to read the story. Same thing here with either of these photos, whether we are looking at, being at home with the experts for the food writer. So she's the dominant element, and then the heading being the second dominant element. And then same thing with this picture of Obama, and then the heading being the secondary dominant element. But tends to be photography that draws people in because people like to look at photos, right? They like to look at photos more than they would text. Here, you don't have a lot of pictures of Andy Warhol because Andy Warhol actually makes art. So they used his name, which is actually far more recognizable than his face, as well as his artwork with Marilyn Monroe, to draw the reader in, and then he's actually up in the top right-hand corner there. So sometimes it's not always photography, but it can be text as well that draws you into a spread. Same thing here. You have a photo that's drawing you in, but the art word is actually what's really drawing you in because it's making you read across the page and go over to the photo. And remember, we read left to right. So most people look to the left page first to find what they're supposed to look at. In photography, we see the same thing. You're going to see dominant individuals or dominant elements and wherever they want to draw your attention. And here it's this woman in the middle of the stage. Here they've centered the subject, and even what he's building is leading up to him. Here, using positioning, the two boys would seem like they are the dominant part of this photo, but really the robot is what's drawing you in, even though it's out of focus, to then lead to the two boys. Here, obviously, the king in the center is going to be your dominant element, and everything else being more out of focus is going to draw you in. And same thing here. You're just seeing this common theme of dominance. So when we talk about 2 pages side by side in your book, we have dominant elements on these spreads. And my question is, what's dominant to you? When you first see the spread, what's the first thing you're seeing as the user? Most of the time, it's pictures. So remember, a dominant element is 2 to 3 times larger than everything else on the spread. Well, this picture over on the right side is 2 to 3 times larger, as is the words disk drive. So those two pieces together are the dominant elements pulling the reader in and leading them down towards the story, and the smaller modules, because down here would be a smaller module where we're talking about boys in ultimate frisbee. This, again, having a very large dominant photo that is far larger, almost 50% larger than everything else, and then the heading drawing you in towards the rest of the story. Same thing here. This is where your dominant element actually takes up the majority of the spread and is more of an introductory piece to the book. As you move through different things, you might find that dominant elements aren't always made up of one thing. So here, the dominant element isn't a photo, and it isn't the word throwback. It's actually the entire design of all of these diamonds together, creating an additional shape. And so I want you to think of like when we ask people to do a photo collage on their walls at home. You've seen this probably a lot in the world of like home decoration, but I'm gonna go ahead and pull one up here because I wanna show you what I'm talking about when I say photo collage on a wall, because it's a very common common thing that we're starting to see a lot of people do. So when you talk about a photo collage on a wall, I'm talking about something like this, where you have a bunch of photos that then work together to create one dominant element. This is very common and can still be used. And actually, in the world of having to crowdsource photos from students, we're going to find that this can still be used as a dominant element while getting smaller photos from our students. As we move through, you're going to see that other elements come into play that will allow you to really pull the reader in. And sometimes we use those in conjunction with other smaller pictures. The next thing we're going to talk about is eyeline.